Okay, so this is a video about how Snapchat tried and failed to separate itself from sort of the algorithmic time-sucking social medias by way of like a big advertisement campaign called More Snapchat, Less Social Media, and also by way of actually changing the app to put their money where their mouth is and actually not be social media and revert back to what Snapchat used to be, which to me was the first time a social media has ever tried to do this. But it's also a video about business incentives and how those are misaligned with making like an actual good product for the folks that use the product and are more about optimizing for advertisers and attention. But before I launch into that criticism, I think it's important to mention that obviously there are some folks at Snapchat who don't want to optimize for attention or have like really bad enshittification social media type stuff. And so I'd like to say, obviously, this criticism isn't leveled at you. I understand that there are probably good people working at Snapchat, as well as like a lot of the other social media companies, right? Like Frances Haugen was at Facebook because she thought she could change it from the inside. And I'm sure there are tons of stories like this where folks thought they could change the social media companies that happen to be publicly traded from the inside, and then they find out they cannot. So yeah, this criticism is not leveled at the folks that try to change Snapchat to simple Snapchat, or even the ones that made the sort of misleading campaign about Snapchat not being social media. This is leveled at like the dorks and business incentives that drive what were once like actually good products like Snapchat or Instagram or YouTube or even Facebook to a certain extent, and Twitter, of course, and make them bad because they're chasing profits over good products. So before we actually like get into the criticism of the folks and the misaligned business incentives, I think it's important to go back to what like Snapchat once was, when it was a good product, and a bit of a personal history, I suppose, with it as well, because I think that's how these products are experienced and felt and like should be considered. So it started out as just like a way to communicate with your friends. You'd like send videos or photos, I think, to start back and forth. And it was over the internet, and my memories with it is mostly with the iPod Touch and a way to communicate with my friends and my family, specifically my siblings, and the folks that I had crushes on. And so this was by way of, simple, funny messages. You take a picture, write a little caption, and then send it on its way. And it was really innocent back and forth. It used to be that you accessed the best friends tab through the browser. So you'd click on, let's say, me, and I would click on my friends list and it would show me my three best friends. And I could also click on one of those and it would send me to their three best friends. So it was like a little bit of a weird invasion into somebody else's habits with the messaging thing, but it was also kind of nice, and it seemed like an unintentional bug than like a intentionally malicious thing, which we'll get to a little bit later. But the important thing was that Snapchat actually felt like an extension of your real life social circle. So the people I knew in real life, I was sending messages to. And it felt that way even when things like stories got introduced, or videos, or even I think the snap maps and all those things. And even initially when the Discover tab got introduced, all of it felt separate, and it all felt focused on me being able to send messages to my friends or whoever I want to communicate with via photos, chat, or video. And I would say these three things sort of remained the core of Snapchat, and communicating with your friends and seeing what they were up to remained the core of Snapchat all the way up until they became public, and it's really just like a little bit after they became public, and suddenly they had shareholders to please, which I believe was in 2018. To ground this, I think myself and a lot of folks my age grew up using internet-based communicators to talk to their friends, their family, whatever else. For me, it was like Snapchat and Facebook Messenger, because at the time when I was growing up, when I was in like junior high and high school, you actually had to, send a text message and it would cost money. Specifically, I developed these habits while I had like a Samsung slider phone, where if I went over a text limit, I would actually, be charging my folks. And so I used Snapchat and Facebook Messenger because it was unlimited, it was free. And as a result of this, like the consequence is you develop habits and you start to notice every little change that happens to the platform. And this is like a heavy user like myself. If anything changes, if like the design of the three panes changes a little bit, or the discovery tab gets introduced, or there's a little change to how stories show up, this is something you notice and feel. And I think that Jules Turpek does a really good job of describing this. So I'll play her video, and if for whatever reason the video doesn't actually do a good job, I'll voice over exactly what I mean.
Supposedly, the initial evolution from favorites to likes on Twitter caused similar outrage. Them more like bookmarks to mark things that you may want to come back to later. Even though they were already public, when Twitter changed the button's name from favorite to like, the icon from a star to a heart, some users ran into trouble with certain tweets now being deemed likes, because that was not their initial intent.
And the idea is that you deeply feel these changes when you're on the platform consistently. In that case, it's Twitter, but in my case, when I was younger, it would be like Snapchat. And the folks that were making the changes, I assume they did use Snapchat, but I can't imagine they used it to the extent that like junior high and high school kids use Snapchat in the United States. And as a consequence of that, like those folks making the changes probably didn't know the actual impact of what they were doing when they made changes. Which, to get to those folks that make the changes, I could wax nostalgic about how great of a product Snapchat was from when I first started using it on my iPod Touch 4 all the way to even when I went off to school, and all the way up to when like they became a public company. Like Snapchat was genuinely a good product that I enjoyed using and communicating with my friends with. But that isn't what this thinking is in service of. This thinking is in service of the way that that product sort of got bastardized and destroyed by folks that were out to make money, which, no problems there, but they destroyed the product. So I deserve, they believe, to be like lampooned a little bit and called dorks, because it reflects their change to the product, reflect like bad taste as well as just like bad sensitivity, in my opinion. So Snapchat becomes a public company, like I mentioned, and then with that public company, there come shareholders to satisfy, and with shareholders to satisfy, you need to figure out a way to make money. But the issue is you have habited a bunch of users on this incredible product that is free, so you're not going to be able to get them to pay, especially if a lot of the folks that you're trying to get to pay are like in high school or college, which I assume most of the user base was, because I didn't know any like adults using Snapchat at the time. So if you can't get those folks habited into this great product to pay, what you can do, and what a lot of social media companies have done, actually like every social media company has done, is you do the ad-based model, right? You optimize for attention, and then you sell ads based on that attention, and you basically take all this user data that you've collected and you cash in on it. You're like, oh, wait, we could sell ads and we can sell the data and like make quite a bit of money. And to a shareholder, it's like, why would you not do that? And the answer is because it ruins the product, but maybe they didn't know at the time. And if you take time to like look back at all the changes post IPO, what you'll notice is like Snapchat sort of optimizing for bottom of the brainstem, attention capture stuff, which they call content, which is fair. I think everybody sort of calls it content. But in my opinion, it's like not really good for the user, especially when the product is designed for you to communicate with your friends and family. And that's like sort of what we've all developed a relationship with the product to be. And then you get introduced sort of like the attractive, which is, attractive people on the stories in the Discover tab. The attractive, the angry, same thing. Or like the awesome, which is, people doing like cool shit, like the people are awesome sort of stuff. Which, I didn't personally want. And it was post IPO that the Discover and Friends tabs, became one. It's where Snapchat had the great idea to change what was friends and content separated, which was fine if you didn't want to go to the content, and they combined it into one. So now if you want to see your friend's story, you also have to see like some dork kick flipping or some like thirst trap or some like rage bait. And you can't just see your friends, you also have to see the things here. Which leads to the Kylie Jenner tweet that was the epigraph of this video. And I think a sentiment very deeply felt by anybody that used Snapchat with any frequency. And it led to a lot of folks leaving the app. I believe there were some reversions post, content and friend being merged, but it never got back to that great product that it once was. And in my case, most of my friends left the app, and save to group chats, I was also off the app. I communicated with my siblings as well as a group of friends on the app still. So every once in a while I would tab in, but I was nowhere near using it with the frequency I once did. I didn't have any snap streaks anymore. And to me, it was sort of just like a dead app ruined by, corporate incentives. Which brings us to me, like the very interesting part of this whole thing, because everyone sort of beat to death the idea that corporate incentives and business incentives are misaligned with great products for users, especially in the case of social media. So I'm not going to beat that horse anymore. It's already dead. There's no use kicking it. Like my anger's already out. I'm post angry at like the dorks that ruined social media. That's fine. Like, you ruined it, big deal. But what was interesting, and the reason I wanted to talk about this, and I really haven't seen anybody else talk about this, what's interesting is that Snapchat actually went back to what made it great in the first place with simple Snapchat, which was like sort of a reversion to pre-IPO Snapchat. It's the idea that if pre or post IPO Snapchat entangled and enmeshed friends and content. It was like an attempt to actually separate that. So I'll read their Snapchat newsroom announcement of what Simple Snapchat was. We're now testing a new and simplified Snapchat that organizes the app around communicating with friends, using the camera, and watching snaps from friends and the broader Snapchat community, including creators and publishers. So this is the reversion to the pre-IPO Snapchat. And then you have a paragraph that's basically telling advertisers not to be afraid and run away. And this will work out in the long term. And then it explains how Simple Snapchat works, which is opening to the camera, having your conversations all in one place, and then having the personalized content for you on the right side. So disentangling the friends and the content. And all this is coming off the back of this sort of weird, but I think good intention, and probably with Simple Snapchat in mind, that they knew they were going to go to this eventually. So they launched this big ad campaign that is more Snapchat, less social media. It's sort of pitting them against the social media companies and pretending that they don't have all like the content stuff. I think within their announcement, they mentioned like non-endless content, and it's just like quite literally there is endless content. Like if you go into Snapchat right now, you'll see there's endless content. If you swipe over to the right and scroll down the Discover page, you'll just like see endless content. So it's funny they said that, especially before Simple Snapchat came out. But still, I think the intentions were pure. And so it's interesting that Snapchat actually tried to do this. This was in September of 2024. And then at some point, because I was still in those group chats, I noticed that and I was impressed by it. And then also at some point in March of 2025, or maybe even a little bit earlier, they reverted back to like the attention sucking, bottom of the brainstem model, which is too bad. And I assume what happened is folks that left and didn't, have my situation where they had something to keep them on the app, folks that left just never came back. And just because you announced Simple Snapchat, you already ruined their product once. And like, who's to say they should devote their time to developing, new relationships with the product that you offer, just like hoping that you don't pull it away like you've done before, and which obviously they've proven now they're going to pull away again. So folks never came back to Simple Snapchat, and my assumption is that was sort of the linchpin, and it didn't really get time, right? Like Simple Snapchat didn't really have time to prove that you could be a sustainable social media, or like in Snapchat's case, you just like could, push away the social media because you never were social media in the first place. But yeah, it didn't work. The shareholders, I assume, or whatever dorks at the company are making the choices, decided that they didn't want to pursue Simple Snapchat, that they wanted to go back to, the brain rot stuff that they have, the enmeshment of friends and content, which to me is like, yeah, fair enough. But eventually our attention's going to drain. Like attention's not an infinite resource. It's finite. And yeah, hopefully the wheels fall off, but I take that back. I don't want anyone to lose their job, but I definitely don't like Snapchat's product right now. So if you're one of the dorks that's, pursuing these incentives and stuff, power to you. I don't think you have like taste, or probably are very interesting to be around, but more power to you for making money. And if you're one of the folks that tried to change Snapchat to what it used to be, like the great product it used to be, cool. Thanks. And good luck in your future endeavors. Probably get out of the company if you can. It's a tough job market.